In this video, I'm going to be explaining some of the issues surrounding this new argument that's being run, uh, mainly on TikTok, where the question is being asked to Christians about how many gods died on a cross. Now, the argument supposes that there is no way in which the Christian would be able to specify the answer being the Son. So, yeah, in this video, we'll be discussing that. So, to begin, I'll begin with an explanation of the logical framework that I'll be using, which is the Russellian framework in understanding the answer to the question, how many gods died on a cross? So, when a question such as how many gods died on a cross is asked, it's not merely a matter of answering a number, of course, but it implicitly rests on a certain background or like some sort of logical picture, which would include a determinate domain of individuals, and within that given domain, a subclass termed gods. Also, of course, predicates that apply to all members within that subclass. The idea that there is a meaning in the numbers of such members. Each of these assumptions must explicitly be enumerated by Russellian logic, and Russellian logic exists to uncover the failure of such assumptions. Keeping this in mind, I'll rephrase all of these conditions using Russellian logic. First of all, when I say that there are three individuals, the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, that is, there are three values which can be values of a bound individual variable to be specific. And under Russellian vocabulary, as can be said, these are individuals, not classes, not propositional functions, and also not descriptions. They are the values of the lowest logical type. Second, by each of these individuals satisfies the propositional function is God, I mean there exists a propositional function that's used is God, such that the proposition formed by substituting the variable in the propositional function with the Father is true, the proposition formed by substituting the variable, the propositional function with the Son is true, and so on for the Holy Spirit. At this stage, nothing yet has been said about identity. The fulfillment of a propositional function is no identity with something. It's only to fall under a condition. Moving to the third premise, that whatever is God is such that predicates truly attributed to God or truly attributed to it. This premise is not some logical truth. It's just an unwarranted claim about predication as identity. Under Russellian logic, predicates are represented by propositional functions only. To say an individual has a predicate is simply to say that the individual satisfies the propositional function representing the predicate. Nothing can be asserted about the interchangeability of individuals with respect to each other based on their shared satisfaction of a propositional function. What the question, how many gods died, presupposes is that God is not a classificatory propositional function, but an identity predicate. To be God is the same thing as to be the same God. In his whole theory of identity, Russell would say that this is going to be a major blunder. As soon as that assumption is brought to light, the question, how many gods on a cross, no longer is the case, right? However, in order to examine why that is, we must obviously go over why Russell will say that it's not the case. Now I'm going to go over Russell's account of identity in some sort of detail, because nearly every misuse of a theological term in logic come about because of some sort of misunderstanding of identity, or perhaps more importantly about what it is not. So what I mean when I say x equals y is that I'm making a statement about numerical identity, of course, right? And when I say numerical identity, I mean that sameness, that is not similarity, but sameness itself, oneness, right? When I say x equals y, I'm saying that there are not two things there, but one and the same thing, not in two different ways. Russell is utterly inflexible on this matter. The definition of identity does not consist in sharing of predicates. The definition consists in unrestricted substitutability. When Russell writes that the definition of identity consists in the interchangeability of x and y for any propositional function, what he says is this: Choose any propositional function you please, no matter how contrived, how gerrymandered, how historically contingent, and then substitute the variable x into this propositional function. If this propositional function happens to be true, then substitute y. And we can break this down. So when I say x is the extension of propositional function phi, then that's a simple propositional function. That is an expression containing a variable that becomes a proposition when a value is assigned to that variable. What I mean when I say for all phi is for all such expression regardless of natural kinds, essential properties, or special predicates. So if the father and son were the same, then every propositional function true of the son would also be true of the father. That is clearly false. Was incarnate, was crucified, was born of Mary. Each of this is a propositional function true of the son, but not true of the father. This is not some, theological assertion. It's reasonable deduction regarding truth values. The instant any such propositional function varied in truth value, numerical identity was eliminated. And here's the crucial point. The inference in how many gods died demands identity, not mere co-predication. It demands that being God involves interchangeability, but this runs contrary to the logic of Russell's Principia, which expressly states that no predicate, no matter how lofty, like quote-unquote is God, can serve as an identity basis unless universal substitution is permitted. So when a person says the Father is God and quote-unquote the Son is God, Russell hears this alone. This is all that's being said here. The Father satisfies some propositional function and the Son satisfies the same propositional function. What's not being said is that the Father and the Son are numerically identical. And once this is realized, the question or argument has no legs to stand on, because there's no entailment from shared divinity to shared death, because there's no identity for predicates to migrate across. Okay. Now, suppose there is a domain of individuals. What I mean by this is, suppose there is a totality of things, each of which is capable of being a value for an individual variable. And by individual here, I just mean individual, singular, and nothing more than that. I'm not referencing any metaphysical baggage such as substance, essence, nature, or hypostasis. I mean only something that can replace a variable in a propositional function in order to form a proposition. Let's now assume the existence of a propositional function that can be expressed as quote-unquote x is God. In clarifying what I mean when referring to it, it can be explained as follows. There is a statement involving a variable such that for a value given to the variable, the statement formed is true or false. To say that a person satisfies a propositional function is to say that that statement is true. Suppose further, and this corresponds to the handed-down doctrine of the Trinity, but represents no theological claim to be exact, that there are three unique individuals among whom these individuals fall. These will be dubbed the Father, the Son, and the Spirit. Note that I mean numerical uniqueness. Each represents a value of the variable that cannot be substituted into all propositional functions. On the basis of this, nothing follows concerning identity. The only thing that follows is a proposition concerning satisfaction. Three individuals are in the extension of a propositional function. We are about to introduce a second propositional function now, which can be expressed in natural language as x died on a cross. Once more, in making this assertion, I simply mean a formula with a variable which forms a proposition when a value is assigned to the variable. Its status is the same as the first one, only its form of satisfaction is different. Now let's assume, again, rather than making a metaphysical claim, that precisely one individual meets the second propositional function. Said individual would be Christ. Okay, we can now talk about extensionality. The extensionality, or the extension, of the first propositional function is the set of all individuals who satisfy x as God. And then the extension of the second propositional function is the set of all individuals who satisfy x died on the cross. Now in Russellian logic, what we must say is that because the first extension has 3 individuals and the second has 1, these 2 extensions obviously are not the same. For extensions to be the same, their elements must match perfectly. A single mismatch precludes sameness. This is not some optional point, or I'm not just positing my own interpretation. This follows immediately from the definition of identity applied to classes or extensions, class theoretical identity. To say that 2 classes are the same is to say that they have the same members. When the members differ, so does the identity. Russell then introduces the concept of a class in order to be able to speak meaningfully about extensions without regarding them as individuals. According to Russell, a class is not something in addition to the members what constitute the class. It is a logical construct. That also implies a further, even more drastic restriction, that if 2 extensions were the same, the class representing that extension would be an individual. Verbs such as died or suffered or was crucified are applicable to individuals alone. These verbs cannot be attributed to a class. Okay, now suppose someone asks how many gods died on a cross. To ask how many is to presuppose that there exists a determinate class of individuals over which counting is defined. Counting, under Russellian logic, applies only when we're dealing with individuals or with classes whose members are individuals. We must therefore ask, what is the logical role of this expression gods? If God is taken to name an individual, then the plural form gods is already illegitimate, since individuals are not pluralizable. In this reading, the question contradicts its own precepts. If God is taken to express a propositional function, that is, if X is God is a logical core of the term, and God does not name anything at all. Propositional functions are not objects. They cannot be counted, and they cannot die. On this reading, the question attempts to count what cannot be counted. Furthermore, if God is taken to denote the class of all individuals satisfying quote-unquote X is God, then we're dealing with a class term. But classes, as Russell insists, are logical constructions, not individuals. They are not the sorts of things to which predicates like died on the cross can meaningfully apply. To ask whether a class died is to commit a category mistake. Thus, on every possible Russellian system, the question fails. It either misuses number, misuses predication, or misuses identity. And once said failure is exposed, the result emerges with complete clarity. We are entitled to say that there exists one individual such that the individual satisfies the propositional function X is God, and also satisfies the propositional function X died on the cross. This statement is fully allowed under Russellian logic. It does not require us to identify individuals. It does not require us to reify classes. It does not require us to treat propositional functions as names. All further claims, such as that 3 gods died, or that God as such died, or that divinity itself suffered, arise only when the distinctions enforced by the Principia are ignored. What remains once the logical dust is settled is not a paradox, but a straightforward answer. Multiple individuals satisfy one propositional function. Exactly one individual satisfies another, and exactly one individual lies in the intersection of the 2 extensions.